Hello, my name is Dr. Dewan S. Raja. Today I will discuss about the plane X-ray of the skull, both the anteroposterior and the lateral view. We will identify some structures of the skull in the X-ray film. Let's start identification. Number one is the sagittal suture. Sagittal suture is the suture between the two parietal bones, and this is an example of the fibrous joint. Then frontal sinus, this is frontal sinus here. Another one, this is present in the frontal bone, and they are usually asymmetrical, more prominent in the male, and it opens into the anterior part of the middle meatus through the frontonasal duct or through the infundibulum. They develop gradually after birth. At the birth, they are very small, maybe absent, and they are just underneath the superciliary arch. They are lined by the pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, like the respiratory epithelium of trachea. Here it is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Then we'll go to the, so this is the sagittal suture. This is the frontal bone, and this is the frontal sinus. Then we'll get the crista galli, number 3. Here is the crista galli. Crista galli is a median ridge on the cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. By the side of the crista galli, we have the openings in the cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. So this is crista galli. It is also the attachment of the anterior end of the fox cerebri. So fox cerebri anterior end is attached here. By the side cribriform plate containing a lot of foramen for the passage of the olfactory nerve. Mastoid air cell. Okay. Mastoid air cell is mastoid air cell. Cells, they are present in the mastoid process of the temporal bone. Okay. So they are also lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Cilia are shorter in mastoid air cells. Nasal septum, that is number 5. This is nasal septum. It is bony part, cartilaginous part. Bony part is contributed by the vomer bone and the perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone and the frontal bone spine, and also an extension of the nasal bone. Okay, so it has the bony part. It has cartilaginous part. It has the nasal cartilage here. This is called septal cartilage. So it is cartilaginous, partly bony. Then inferior concha, number 6 is the inferior concha, also called inferior turbinate. Inferior concha is an independent bone. Okay, and just underneath the inferior concha we have the inferior meatus for the opening of the nasolacrimal duct, and the nasolacrimal duct opening is guarded by the Husner's valve. Okay, so the nasolacrimal duct opens into the inferior meatus of the nose. Inferior meatus is covered by the inferior nasal concha. Then number 7, dens of the axis. This is the dens of the axis. Dens, also called odontoid process of the axis. This is this. Okay, and it is behind the anterior arch of the atlas. This is the second cervical vertebra tooth-like process that is called dens. Maxillary sinus, number 8 here. This is the area of the maxillary sinus, very much related to the teeth root, the upper jaw. Okay, so teeth infection may go there, or disinfection may go to the teeth. Both way possible. So this is another maxillary sinus. Okay, ethmoidal air cell, we have multiple. They are present here. Okay, they are also present here. Ethmoidal air cell, anterior group, middle group, and posterior group. So you got frontal sinus opens into the middle meatus, anterior part in front at the anterior part of the hiatus semilunaris via the frontonasal duct or via the infundibulum. The maxillary sinus opens into the middle meatus, okay, to the hiatus semilunaris. Ethmoidal air cell has three groups: anterior group, middle group, posterior group. Anterior group opens into the anterior part of the hiatus semilunaris. Middle group opens into the middle meatus at the bulla ethmoidalis. Posterior group opens into the superior meatus of the nose. Okay, we got the opening of the ethmoidal air cell. Their number variable, maybe a few to 25 or 30 air cells. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, here is the lateral view of the skull. Again, frontal sinus is here, lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Nasal septum. This is a nasal bone, not the septum. Nasal bone. Nasal bone is commonly fractured due to any type of injury, trauma. Okay, that may lead to bleeding from the nose. We call it epistaxis. Hard palate, number 3. This is the hard palate here. Then hyoid bone. This is hyoid bone. Anterior clinoid process is here, and posterior clinoid process is here. And this is the pituitary fossa. For the placement of the pituitary gland is here. This is the pituitary fossa. Then we'll get the lambdoid suture. That is this part, lambdoid suture between the occipital bone and the parietal bone. Sphenoidal sinus. This is the sphenoidal sinus. What is the sphenoidal sinus? Number 8 is the sphenoidal sinus. Sphenoidal sinus is very important. Above it, we have the pituitary fossa for the pituitary gland. Okay, and the sphenoidal sinus forms the roof of the nose. Okay, and by the side of the parietal sphenoidal sinus, we'll get the cavernous sinus, an internal carotid artery. Above it, we'll get the pituitary gland and the optic chiasm here. So any pituitary gland tumor will increase this area, and that tumor may compress on the optic chiasm. That may lead to bitemporal hemianopsia or hemianopia. Bitemporal hemianopia, that is possible. Okay, so sphenoidal sinus is also important to do surgery for the pituitary gland. Surgeon approach to the nose, break down the part of the sphenoidal sinus, and get the pituitary gland out of the space. Okay, we got that. Lambdoid sinus is here. Mastoid air cell. Number 9 is mastoid air cell here. Multiple air cells. Posterior tubercle of the atlas. Number 10 is the posterior tubercle of the atlas. There is the first cervical vertebra. It has no typical spinous process. Rather, it has a posterior tubercle. Number 11 is the spinous process of the axis. This is the spinous process of the axis. Okay, and that's all about the plain X-ray of the skull, anteroposterior and lateral view. If you have any question, please feel free to ask me. Please share the information with your friends. Please support my channel. Please subscribe me. Have a nice, wonderful and blessed day. Bye now.